Hi, I'm Su-Hie from University Malaysia, Sarawak. Today, I'd like to present our paper on Spotlight on LGBT in Malaysian online newspapers, Insights from Textual Analytics. This is a study that looks into the coverage of LGBT by newspapers. And so far, the coverage can be broadly classified as positive and negative. The positive coverage on LGBT will focus on the rights of the LGBT individuals, whereas the negative coverage on LGBT usually highlight issues of human nature, morality, and religion. And our review shows that the news coverage of LGBT tends to be negative in countries such as Canada, Indonesia, and Turkey. In Malaysia, similar studies are not available, but we know that there is a prohibitive stance against LGBT because same-sex marriage is prohibited by the Conference of Rulers as early as 1989. And Selangor State has a law against cross-dressing. Previously, we have attempted to analyze newspaper articles using qualitative analysis, and we found that negative coverage tends to be shown by alternative newspapers because they tend to focus on Malaysian LGBT events. But we have one mainstream English newspaper that shows a balanced representation, and this is mostly because they cover LGBT issues within and without Malaysia. So there will be articles looking into the affirmation of LGBT rights versus the prohibitive stance against LGBT. We found that when we do qualitative analysis, it has certain limitations in that we look at the absence and the presence of certain themes. But there is certain advantage that textual analytics offer because it analyzes the whole corpus for the frequency of words. And from this, we can see the amount of space or words that are devoted to certain aspects of LGBT. And knowing these aspects are important because it reveals the salience attributed to different aspects of LGBT by the newspapers. And it will influence the attitudes of readers towards LGBT, whether they accept or reject LGBT, and the grounds they use for accepting or rejecting LGBT. The purpose of our study was to examine the aspects that are spotlighted in news articles on LGBT using the textual analytic approach. We look at, firstly, the frequency of the top-ranked words in the news corpus, and secondly, the positive and negative coverage of LGBT in the 4 online newspapers. Our corpus consists of 60 articles on LGBT in the 4 Malaysian newspapers in 2019, and it amounts to 26,000 words. The table here shows the newspaper articles and the word count. We have 3 alternative newspapers, which are Malaysiakini, Free Malaysia Today, and Astro Awani Online, and 1 mainstream newspaper in English, The Star Online. As for the data analysis procedures, we use the LIWC software, Linguistic Inquiry and Word Count software by Penny Baker, 2011. This software has been validated using 100,000 files of over 250 million words. So it is a very valid software for textual analysis. What we did was we filtered the news corpus in these ways before we did the analysis. We took word tokens, but in order to analyze this, we had to remove other forms of tokens such as punctuations and hyperlinks. We also remove non-content words such as articles, prepositions, and auxiliary verbs because they do not carry much meaning. Then the filtered news corpus that consists of content words was inputted into the LIWC 2015, and the software ranked the nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs according to the frequency of usage in the corpus. And also, according to positive and negative groupings. Here are the results of our study. Firstly, the aspects of LGBT highlighted in news articles. When we did this analysis, we took the combined corpus of 26,000 words and analyzed the top 30 words, the most frequently used 30 words. So you can see from the table here, the word LGBT appears 222 times and is ranked the highest. Gay is used 109 times and is ranked number 3. Ranking number 15 is the word transgender, used 56 times. Interestingly, the word bisexual did not appear in the top 30 words, meaning that the focus here are mostly on men who are LGBT. Next, we see that the words that is the second frequently used in the corpus is tidak, but the English equivalent no and not were not appearing in the top 30 words. And this is interesting because out of the 60 articles we analyzed, 29 of them were written in Malay, and yet the word tidak ranked second. This indicates that LGBT is mostly portrayed negatively and considered not acceptable in the news articles written in Malay. Here, there is an excerpt showing that the word tidak is used. This excerpt here is about the Convention on Safe Workplaces that is free from violence and harassment. And in the Malaysian context, the employee-related associations such as MTUC and MEF were against this because there is a section inside the document that includes LGBT. And this is a document or convention that is initiated by the International Labour Organization. So Malaysia decided to take a neutral stance on this, and this is one of the events that is highly reported in the news articles in 2019. Next, the textual analysis reveals certain associations of LGBT with Malay and Muslims. You can see here from the table that the word ranked 5 is Melayu, Malay. The word ranked 10 is Islam, and the word ranked 12 is Agama. So you see that there is certain association with Malay Muslims. But in these top 30 words, we do not see other ethnic groups appearing or other religions appearing. So there is certain associations of LGBT. And you also see that the word that is ranked 8 is Menteri or Minister. This is because the news articles frequently cite religious leaders and also ministers on their views on LGBT. Here is one example. Deviant culture. LGBT among reasons Malays reject Bersatu political party. Anwar Ibrahim, he is a politician. So you see here the inclusion of voices from the minister. And it is negative. And it mentions Malays. Here is the other results on the second part which we look at, which is positive and negative coverage of LGBT in the 4 online newspapers. For this analysis, we compare across the 4 newspapers and focus on the top 10 words. And for this comparison, we also use normalized frequencies per 1,000 words to equalize and facilitate the comparison. You can see here the top 3 words, and I have put in blue the references to LGBT and related references, and words that show positive coverage of LGBT, I have put in green, such as rights, and words that show negative coverage of LGBT, I have put in red, such as tidak, no, or not. So let me show you the coverage by by the Star Online. You can see here in the top 10 words, 3 of the words are highlighted in red: sex, law, and court. This is because there are a lot of police involvement whenever there are LGBT issues or events. And The court here refers to the cases when transgender are brought to court. You see two words in green, rights and activists. So from this, we can say that the Star Online is balanced in its coverage of LGBT. Next, we have Free Malaysia Today. You see that I have highlighted 4 words in green and none of the words are in red, showing that Free Malaysia Today has a positive coverage of LGBT. The word wanita, women, and himpunan or gathering is ranked very high in Free Malaysia Today, 3rd and 4th rank, because they highlighted the event whereby there was a Women's Day March on the 9th of March 2019, and a group of LGBT individuals joined the gathering, and this created controversy, and the organizers were called in for questioning. But generally, you see in green, Free Malaysia Today, positive coverage of LGBT. Next, we have Malaysiakini. You see a lot of words that are highlighted in red. Tidak, Melayu, comic, Islam, agama, or religion. The comics was became an issue because it portrayed the struggles of LGBT individuals. So Malaysiakini, generally negative coverage of LGBT. And finally, Astro Awani Online. You see also a balance of words in green and also red, which shows that Astro Awani Online presents a balanced coverage of LGBT that highlights their rights versus the controversies. In conclusion, I would like to say that the lexical analysis using textual analytics is good in revealing that LGBT is represented as a controversial issue in the 4 online newspapers. It does a very objective analysis based on the frequency of words. And from this, we could see that most of the articles highlighted LGBT negatively and also highlighted the non-permissiveness towards LGBT. It also highlighted the association of LGBT with Malay and Muslims. And the negativity comes about because of the quotation of government and religious views on LGBT. We found that the voice of activists and advocates of LGBT rights are drowned out in the process. This textual analytics software also suggested that Free Malaysia Today is inclined towards positive coverage of LGBT, whereas Malaysiakini is inclined towards negative coverage. The other 2 newspapers have a balanced coverage of LGBT. That is the Star Online and Astro Awani Online. Finally, this study concurs with past findings on the negative coverage of LGBT in countries like Turkey, Canada, and Indonesia. Thank you.